Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sewing Thursday with T. I am, of course, T, and you might recognize me from my sewing blog, Sewing by T, or my fabric shop, Simply by T, but of course, you are just welcome to call me T. So today I have got some really fabulous things for you. We are going to be talking about elastic, which I buy in super bulk, so we're going to talk about that. I have got my favorite tube turner. And we are going to be talking about these super giant kits of sewing machine feet that you can get on Amazon for practically nothing. Hello and welcome, Natasha and Karen. I have got some really fun stuff. So before we get started, I've got some really cool free patterns that are coming up that I want to make sure that you know about. So Winterwear Designs just released a free t-shirt pattern as part of their holiday thing, and you will notice on the cover is Simply by T rayon spandex. So if you are looking for a super fun free project for yourself, you'll want to go check that out. And then Rebecca Page is getting ready to release their 2017 free party dress, and I am really excited. Simply by T is going to be helping by providing fabric ideas, and we are going to have plenty of promo in the group. And of course, that pattern is free. So you are going to want to make sure that you are staying on top of that because you are going to want that free pattern. And of course, as a sponsor, there will be a giveaway. And even better, Rebecca Page is giving us free pattern copies to give away in the group. So you get the basic pattern for free, but there are some add-on things that you can only get if you pay. And we are going to have those to give away. So you're going to want to make sure that you're a member of our Facebook group. So make sure that when you hop on, and whether you're watching this video live right now or a playback, that you comment and say hi. That helps Facebook keep track of our video and make sure that lots of people get to see it. Let me slow down. I'm speaking a little fast today. So up first, we are going to talk about elastic. So most people buy elastic in these little tiny packs. This is a 3/4 inch elastic and it's 1 yard. In a pinch, I will buy these if I'm out, but chances are I am never going to be out. So let's talk about how T buys her elastic. I buy these giant sized rolls from Wawak. Let's see. This one came with 144 yards. And it's 3/4 elastic. And of course, this is going to be a far cheaper way to buy your elastic. But you don't want to have like a bajillion rolls of these for every size imaginable because that's just ridiculous. Who has storage for these size rolls? So how do you decide what you need? I also have my big roll of 1 inch. There we go. And again, it's 144 yards. I actually just finished off a giant roll of 3/8 inch elastic. So how do you know what elastic to buy? How do you know what sizes are worth buying in bulk and what you should just buy in the little packs as needed? So if you sew for kids and you like elastic waistbands, you're going to want the 3/4 elastic. This is what I use in most of my kids' leggings for the ones that have elastic waistbands. If you're not sewing for kids, you probably need the 3/4 inch. So think about that. If you're for kids all the time, like I sew for my kids, then you want a roll of 3/4 inch because that lasts me, let's see. I've had it for about 2 years, probably got another 2 years worth on here. Elastic does stock up to the point where you're not going to use it until 10 years from now. So Natasha here is asking if I have a favorite type. I like the poly elastics. I think these are called braided. And the reason I like these is I actually serge them into the waist seam and then turn them and top stitch them. So these work really well for that. If you like to put it in an actual casing, you might prefer non-roll elastic. But there's actually a tip for sewing in non-roll elastic. So I guess I'm gonna have to cover that next week because I don't have anything here to show you the trick to using regular elastic and turning it into non-roll. Karen here is asking, how long does elastic last? So That's kind of a trick question because it depends on a lot of factors. One, it depends on how dry is your climate. Here in Wyoming, our climate is very dry. So 32% humidity is a lot of humidity for us. And when it's raining, we might get to 50 or 60%. When I lived in New Jersey, 98, 99% humidity was a real thing. Like, I don't know how it wasn't like living underwater. It felt like it though. So if you live in a more humid climate, your elastic is going to last longer. If you live in a dry climate, your elastic is going to tend to dry out. That said, we're not talking about it drying out in a year. I've had this roll for 2 years already. One of those years it was in New Jersey, and right now it's in Wyoming. It's still plenty stretchy. It's not getting ready to crumble or anything. So you kind of have to weigh that. I wouldn't buy more elastic than you're going to use in about 5 years. Partially because you might change your mind about what kind of elastic you like, and partially because I can pretty much guarantee that it'll last 5 years. I don't know what it's going to look like 10 years from now. So also consider the quality of your elastic. I buy from Wawak, so I trust their elastic. If you're going to be buying it on eBay, I can't make any promises. You don't know how long it sat in their warehouse. So 3/4 elastic is really good if you sew for kids. If you're not sewing for kids, you might want to skip the 3/4 altogether and only buy it when you actually need it. The elastic I use most for my own pants, of course, is 1-inch elastic. I know some people like 1 1/4 and 1 1/2. I'm 5'1". I don't like really big waistbands because they start to take up part of my waist and it feels bulky and uncomfortable for me. So think about what is your favorite pair of pants to make. For that specific pattern, what size elastic do they recommend? Are they recommending a 1-inch elastic? Well, if that's the case and that's your favorite pair of pants and you're going to make them over and over, then buy your 1-inch elastic. For the most part, I do not buy bigger than 1-inch elastic, and if a pattern requires something bigger than that, I just modify the pattern. So I can talk about how to modify your pattern waistbands to fit the elastic you have rather than going out and buying all these different sizes. But that's what I do and that works for me. So that's why I have this giant roll. I've had it about 2 years. I guess it's got about 2 years left on it. We'll see, but I'm certainly not going to have this dry rot on me before I use it all. And if you do come across, you're like at an estate sale or a garage sale, how do you know if the elastic has dry rot? So here's what you do. And I'm assuming they're going to let you touch it. Sometimes they don't, and they can be kind of crabby. But pull the elastic a few times. If you pull it and it ends up perfectly straight and it's nice and even and it doesn't make a crackling sound, because dry rotted elastic will crackle and you'll actually see breaks along it where the plastic or the elastic has actually started to degrade, don't buy dry rotted elastic because you can't use it. But if you pull it and it bounces back, it doesn't make a crackling sound, it isn't scratchy to the touch, then your elastic is probably okay. And you can go ahead and grab that great deal. Okay, so that is elastic. And next week, I will show you how to use regular elastic in a waistband without being the non-roll and make sure that it doesn't roll, because nobody likes rolling in your elastic bands. That's really annoying. Up next, tube turners, okay? I cannot find my other tube turner. So I'm sorry I can't show it to you, and I really wanted to. So my other tube turner has a little hook. It's like a metal rod, and it has a little hook on the end and then a little round circle at the base so that your piece doesn't get lost as you're going to turn it. I really hate that other tube turner, which is why I bought these. And the reason I hate it is that it doesn't have an outer casing, so you're stuck trying to pull through the inside of the inside of your tube. And if your fabric isn't really smooth and silky, it's going to catch and it's not going to pull, and there's going to be a lot of bad words said. So I grabbed this really cheap one. Let's see if we can. There we go. It's not fancy. I'm pretty sure I picked it up at Walmart. I probably needed to turn some swimsuit bands. And I did like this one. So let me show you how this one is different. You have a tube, and you have a stick. There's nothing special about this stick. You could use a wooden chopstick and a straw. But the reason I like this one is it has 3 different size tubes so that depending on the size tube that you're turning, it's a lot easier. So you run the tube, you run the straw, well, that's what I basically call it, it's just an oversized straw. You run the straw through the tube, you hook the end just a little bit over, and you push it through. Because the tube is nice and smooth, you don't have to worry about whether the fabric's going to catch on itself, because it can't catch on itself because the tube is in the way. I actually use my little hook with these tubes. So the hook hooks a little edge of the fabric and pulls it through so that you're not jamming it with this little wooden stick. I don't love the wooden stick, but I couldn't find my hook. And speaking of swimsuits, I did forget one other elastic you might want to consider keeping in your stash, and that is 3/8 inch swim elastic. I do use it interchangeably for 1/4 inch elastic in a lot of my projects, and it is perfect for swimsuits, leotards. I do make my daughter's leotards for her gymnastics class, and we just started doing swim class too, so I make a lot of swimsuits, a lot of leotards, and you need that in the leg and the arm bands. And in general, women's sizing also uses 3/8 inch elastic, so it's pretty interchangeable. So I don't buy 3/8 inch poly knit elastic, I buy the swim elastic. It is a little softer, so sometimes you have to account for that in your project, but it's definitely something to consider. So while I'm getting ready to talk about the next thing, if you guys could just comment there in the comments with what size elastic you use most. And like I said, WAWAC is the place to grab those in bulk. They are super awesome. And unless you have a special project that needs a special size, don't buy the little elastics. All right. So I have actually in the past bought one of these kits and returned it. And you can get these kits for pretty much any sewing machine, and they have, depending on the one you buy, somewhere between 18 and 42 options. This one has 42. Mine does not have a walking foot. I don't really need a walking foot, but there is a kit that includes a walking foot. And so I have bought this in the past and returned it because it didn't work for my machine. I'm like, well, this doesn't work. So here's the catch. You need a new ankle. So if you buy the kit and it snaps onto your sewing machine and everything works, that is fabulous. But if it doesn't, what you need is this ankle. And I think this ankle cost me $1.18. So this is not a huge life investment. This is an ankle. And it allows me to snap on all of these other feet. So why did I buy this set? So of course it's got like a million different feet, and I really like the open toe feet because it allows you to use your decorative stitches. I actually lost my open toe foot in our move, so I needed to replace it, and it came with 2 different ones, a plastic one and a metal one, depending on how much space you need. Now my machine has a nice open, I think it's 9 millimeters for a zigzag stitch. So you want to make sure that the size of your open toe foot is big enough for what your machine can stitch. And it has a zipper foot, which I already have like 3 different kinds of zipper feet. I have my invisible zipper foot, I have my plastic zipper foot, and then I have one that's very similar to this one that you just snap to either side. But why did I buy this kit? It was actually for this bias tape application foot. So when the Love Notions Rhapsody came out, Karen here is saying why I bought the whole set is because the whole set costs about the same as just buying a couple of feet from your dealer, and that is absolutely true. Now, if you want to absolutely 100% be sure that your foot is going to work on your machine, you can buy it from the dealer. And I found that feet for my machine cost anywhere from about $50 to $150 per foot. I believe I paid $28 for this whole set. Now, your dealer is going to tell you that by using these feet, you are voiding your warranty. I am not telling you that that is not true. That is between you and your dealer. So consider carefully whether saving money is worth getting the cheaper feet at the risk of possibly ruining your machine. Now, the key to make sure that you're not ruining your machine is this little ankle. That ankle is going to make the difference as to how high and how these feet snap onto your machine. My machine actually snaps in at an angle on my regular foot, so this foot snaps in from below. And I actually considered buying a different foot, and perhaps I will in the future and tell you about it. There is a foot that has a little clip, a little hole right here that clips on, and that way you don't need a, what is it called? A hump jumper, I think is what it's called. And that allows you to sew over high seams, especially when you're sewing jeans. That inseam when you're jumping over to get across that crotch thing can be a pain. Back to this foot that I bought. So I bought this foot when the Love Notions Rhapsody came out, and you're supposed to apply bias tape across the next line. Now, I have to admit that I bought this kit and I was all excited about it, and then I never made the Rhapsody. So that was kind of, you know, it took too long for the kit to get to me, and then I got distracted by other patterns. But this foot right here helps you apply the bias tape so that it doesn't slide around and you don't have to pin it 100 times, because when you pin bias tape, you end up distorting it and it doesn't sit close enough onto that seam. So it's really ideal to apply bias tape without any pins, which can be really tricky, especially if you're not used to working with a lot of bias tape. I've done a lot of elastic fold over elastic sewing diapers. So I'm pretty good at eyeballing it and just kind of getting it butted against that seam. But this is a nice little tool. Like I said, this basically has like every foot you could ever use, ever. Sorry, I gotta shrink this so it'll fit in the box. So if you're feeling like you need a foot or you want to do something new, Joelle's asking are you asking whether the bias tape foot works well or whether the whole kit works well? Joelle, I'm gonna make sure I answer your question. Shalini's asking if it would work on the Love Notions vest. So it depends on how the seams are done, because if the seam is bulky, it's not going to fit inside. Let's see if we can get this little section right here. It's not going to fit well inside that little section if your seam is really bulky. I have made like puffer type vests, and it did not fit in a foot like this. So I had to just carefully piece it together and keep moving that bias tape and holding it close. But I haven't looked at the new Love Notions vest to know whether it's more puffer along that seam or whether the seam or the puffy part is cut back more so that that seam is really thin. But it works really well for applying bias tape along a woven neckline. So Joelle is wondering whether this bias foot works really well. I did test it out. I don't know that it is better than just my personal experience and how much experience I have working with bias tape without a special foot. So I didn't play with it enough to say it was better than me. But if you are new and nervous and not sure, then it's a great tool to have, because it's going to give you that little extra confidence that things aren't going to go slipping around. Because it does a very good job of holding the bias tape in place in relationship to the needle. And that's where most people make mistakes, is that they have to keep track of where the bias tape is, where the fabric is, and where the needle is, and making sure that you get that nice consistent stitching, because bias tape is thin, and any variation away from, I think the eye can see like 1/32 of an inch when you're looking at stitching lines, and that variation can really drive people crazy. So this will help make sure that in reference to the bias tape, your stitching is perfectly straight. So it is really, really helpful for that purpose, especially if you're a little bit crazy like me and you really want those lines to be straight. It will make sure that it lines up to the needle. Now, it doesn't make sure that your fabric stays where it's supposed to go, so you still have to adjust for that. But it is great for making sure those stitching lines look really good. So there are a lot of feet in here. So here is what I would like to do. I am actually going to put up a little poll in the Facebook group, and I'm going to mention some of the feet that are in here. And if there's a foot that you want to know about, and you need to decide, do you need that foot? Is that foot going to help you? Then I want you to come over to that post and ask me questions about the feet. because I have them here and I should use them, right? Shalini here is saying, my favorite foot from the kit is the knit foot. I don't use my walking foot anymore. I have 2 machines and have one set with knit foot and ballpoint needles at all times. Other one from Wovens. So I am not sure, are you talking about the rollerball foot? Because before I had adjustable pressure, foot pressure on my machine, I had one of these rollerball feet. And they are kind of fabulous. They are really, really amazing for working with leather, especially the vegan leather like Girl Charlie has, because that stuff can be really sticky. And so because this ball rolls the fabric versus like actually applying pressure, it works really well because you won't end up with skip stitches and bunching like you usually do when working with those kinds of fabrics. I don't see anything else here that makes me think that I would call it a knit foot. Let me check the bottom and see if it tells me anything, because that's what I would use. Open toe, applique, braiding, straight. There we go, knit foot. I see what you're talking about. Let me find it. All right, this one here. This is the knit foot, okay? And what it does is, as you're going along, let's see if I can show you. This releases some of the pressure on the foot. So it kind of works like a little mini walking foot. And because it releases that little bit of pressure, you won't have the feed dogs dragging the fabric along faster than the fabric can roll across the top, because that can happen, and that's usually why you end up with wavy stitches. So if you don't have adjustable pressure foot pressure, this is a great little tool. And like I said, it came with my kit. My machine does have adjustable pressure foot pressure, and I don't have any problem sewing knits with it, but I also have a very expensive machine, and if it couldn't sew knits, I would probably send it back. So, but yeah, this is a neat little foot. And I haven't tried it on my machine because I don't need it, but I am going to check and see if it will work on my daughter's Hello Kitty machine, and I will bring you guys back samples. So if you've been struggling to sew knits on your machine and you don't like how loud the walking feet are, because they are loud and they go chugga, 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 chugga through every single stitch. And number one, that's really annoying to me because then I can't hear my show that I'm Netflixing while I'm sewing. And secondly, my sewing area leads right up to the stairs to my kids' bedroom. So they usually come down and say, Mom, your machines are too loud. And then I don't get to sew. So that's not good for anybody, especially if you sew a lot at night. So I am going to test out this little foot and give you guys results back. But Shalini, thanks for pointing it out, because there's so many feet here. It's hard for me to even know what is what. So I have gone way over time because I got a little bit excited about all the feet in here. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Remember that in the group, I'm going to ask about what feet people want to know about, which ones are worth investing in, which ones aren't. Make sure that you like this video and that you share it with anybody you think might enjoy it, because that helps make sure that people get to see it and people get this information. So unless we have other questions about sewing things, oh, one last thing. Our black double brush poly has finally been released from the port and should have shipped yesterday, so it should hopefully be here tomorrow. And we are going to do everything we can to get those orders out right away. We hate that it's been waiting this long, but I can't control the port, so they don't give me that kind of power. And I will have decisions made on the baby French terry either tomorrow or Monday. So if you've put off doing the poll, make sure you hop over and do that, because I want to make sure that your votes are counted before I pick out the colors we want. So thank you for joining me and sharing my excitement over all of these sewing machine feet, and I will see you next week.